Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Jim Harbaugh is 47-18 going into his 6th year in Ann Arbor. He's nearly averaging a 10-win season every single year. Teams across the country would kill for that type of success. But what they wouldn't kill for is 0 division crowns during that time. Going 0-5 against your main rival over these past 5 years, and going 1-4 in bowl games over these past 5 years, including 2 losses in New Year's Six bowl games. Michigan simply has struggled to win the big games. Can 2020 be the year that all changes? If they want that to be the case, they're going to have to settle on a quarterback. The offense for Michigan returns just 4 starters, and unfortunately they lose their star quarterback Shea Patterson. So now, offensive coordinator Josh Gattis and Jim Harbaugh have to decide on Dylan McCaffrey or Joe Milton to lead the charge for the Wolverines this season. McCaffrey, much more dual threat than Joe Milton, has been able to show off his dual threat abilities in very limited playing time. Joe Milton is quite the opposite. Great arm strength, more of a passer than McCaffrey, but not nearly as mobile. You have the best of both worlds there, but they have to settle on one. And these 2 quarterbacks had just 27 combined pass attempts in 2019. Whoever is at the helm will have a great supporting cast, though. They return their top 2 wide receivers in Ronnie Bell and Nico Collins, and have a kind of a 2-headed monster at running back in Zach Charbonnet and Hassan Haskins, who combined for 1,300 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns last year. The only cause of concern on Michigan's offense is their offensive line. They lose 4 of their 5 offensive linemen from 2019. So whoever is under center better hope they build some chemistry, not with their receivers quickly, but with their offensive line as well, because they're going to need that protection in the very dangerous Big Ten. As we all know, Michigan will rely heavily on their defense. They returned 6 starters this season. They were 11th in total defense in 2019, allowing just 20.7 points per game. And while they will be relatively dangerous up front, don't sleep on their secondary, led by Ambry Thomas, who led the team with 3 interceptions last year. We know that Don Brown has done a phenomenal job in Ann Arbor as defensive coordinator, and if Michigan wants to win the big games, if they want to remain a contender in the Eastern Division all the way up until November 28th against Ohio State, the defense is going to have to carry them. Michigan opens up the season on the road against Washington. That's not how you want to open a huge season for Jim Harbaugh. They don't get to ease into the year. They don't get to open up against a cupcake opponent where they can have mistakes and work out a brand new quarterback. They have to travel all the way out west to take on brand new head coach Jimmy Lake and the Huskies. And Washington's a team that is kind of in a very similar position as Michigan. They are looking for a brand new quarterback, as Jacob Eason decided to leave early for the NFL draft. Not a good decision on his part. They will more than likely rely on Jacob Sermon, the sophomore quarterback. They return just 4 starters offensively, just like Michigan, but they do return 7 starters defensively, and you know that's going to be a strength as Lake was promoted from defensive coordinator to that head coaching position after Chris Peterson resigned. Washington was 15th in scoring defense last year, allowing just 19.4 points per game. This is the type of game here that is going to be relatively low scoring. With 2 brand new quarterbacks going at it, 2 very solid defenses going at it, it's going to be probably a game that probably does not exceed more than 20 to 24 points. But in this game, the key is going to be the trenches. Who can win in the trenches? And that is going to be Washington. They have a very, very strong defensive line going up against a very inexperienced Michigan offensive line. They have the home field advantage. I like the Huskies to get a monumental win to kick off the Jimmy Lake era, and that is certainly not how you want to open up the season if you are the Wolverines. They lose to Washington, but should bounce back with relatively easy games against Ball State and Arkansas State out of the MAC and the Sun Belt. They then jump into the biggest stretch of their season. Wisconsin, Penn State, at Michigan State, and at Minnesota. You can throw Purdue in there if you want, but these 4 games are going to be the toughest by far. And we'll start here with Wisconsin. You look at this, and you think Michigan, how brutal it is they have to go on this 4-game stretch, but also how fortunate it is that they get to host 2 of the best teams in the Big Ten at home, in Wisconsin and Penn State. And this is a major revenge game for the Wolverines going up against Wisconsin. As we all know, last year, Michigan traveled to Camp Randall Stadium and got annihilated 35-14 by the Badgers. And that great Wolverine defense looked like a pee-wee football team out there as they allowed the Badgers to run all over them for 359 rushing yards. But luckily, the star running back Jonathan Taylor is gone. Wisconsin has to find a replacement for him. They will boast a very strong defense yet again under Paul Chryst. 9 returning starters on that side of the ball. They do return a veteran quarterback in Jack Cohn, who played extremely well last year. But revenge is on Michigan's mind. Revenge is on Michigan's mind. I think offensively, they actually will own a slight edge. I like their running game a little bit better right now. I like their wide receiver core a little bit better right now. And what will probably be a relatively low-scoring game, just like the Washington game, I think home field advantage plays a role, regardless of how many fans are there or not. And Michigan gets revenge over the Badgers. Starts 1-0 in Big Ten Conference play. They then take on Penn State back-to-back weeks. Some can view that as a good thing. Some can view that as a bad thing. Last year, Michigan traveled to Happy Valley for the annual Penn State whiteout game. And even though they lost 28-21, that second half, you really saw Michigan turn a corner. They mounted the comeback and were a dropped pass in the end zone away from tying that game and possibly sending it to overtime. After that loss to Penn State in Happy Valley, Michigan's offense skyrocketed. They went 4-1 to finish the season, including a dominant win over Notre Dame, a complete annihilation of the Fighting Irish. You look at this Penn State game here, a series where the home team has won 4 straight games. Michigan winning in 2016, Penn State winning in 2017, Michigan in 18, Penn State in 19. Who wins in 2020? Can the streak end? No, it cannot. Michigan gets another huge win over a great Big Ten opponent in Penn State. Now you look at this. A key in this game is going to be ball security. Michigan was terrible when fumbling the ball last year. Fumbled the ball 1.85 times per game. We're just using decimals here. I know we could round it up to 2. But 1.85 times per game they fumbled the ball, while Penn State led the nation in forced fumbles with 22. So, of course, they're going to have to do a great job of not turning over the ball to Penn State, because if they do, that Penn State offense will make you pay for it. But, once again, home team has won 4 straight in this series. Like Wisconsin, Michigan wants a little bit of revenge over the Nittany Lions. And before people jump to conclusions and say how ridiculous he has them winning against Wisconsin and Penn State but losing to Washington, keep in mind that under Jim Harbaugh, Michigan is 30-5 at home. 30-5 at home under Jim Harbaugh, and 3 of those 5 losses came to Ohio State. They've only lost 2 games at home to opponents that were not named Ohio State. That includes Wisconsin, that includes Penn State. And I think once again, the Wolverines get huge, huge victories over these 2 opponents. And just like that, after a season opening loss, they're now 4-1. They then go on the road to take on Michigan State. For the first time since 2006 and 2007, Michigan won back-to-back games over the Spartans. They defeated them 44-10 last year, and what we didn't know at the time, but was Mark D'Antonio's last season in East Lansing. Now the Spartans bring in Mel Tucker. They were dealt a terrible hand, having to find a brand new head coach in the middle of February. They got him from Colorado, bring him in, but Michigan State, once again, didn't have the benefit of spring practice as they're going through a major quarterback battle, as they're going through brand new schemes with a brand new head coach, and lose so many people on both sides of the ball. They're one of the most interesting teams in the Big Ten list this year because we genuinely do not know what to expect. You can expect the defense to be a strength again because Mel Tucker is a defensive-minded coach, and Michigan State only allowed about 22.6 points per game last year. But offensively, they're just not there yet. I think the Michigan defense has a field day, much like they did last year in that 34-point beatdown, and Michigan goes on the road and gets a third straight victory over their in-state rival. They then travel to Minnesota. The Golden Gophers surprised a lot of people, going 11-2 last year. P.J. Fleck doing a fantastic job. But unfortunately for Michigan, this 5-game winning streak is going to come to an end against P.J. Fleck. They take a loss here to Minnesota, a team that I really think is going to be a huge test for this Michigan defense. They return Tanner Morgan. He returns 2 of his top 3 wide receivers in Chris Ottman-Bell and Rashad Bateman. This is a Minnesota team that beat Auburn in their bowl game, beat Penn State at home last year, was 1 win away from making the Big Ten championship, and are certainly Big Ten West title contenders in 2020. With home field advantage on their side, with one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten on their side, and a defense that was better than Michigan's last year, ranking 10th in total defense, I like the Golden Gophers' chances of getting a big win over the Wolverines. They then return home after back-to-back road games to take on Purdue, a team that went 4-8 last year, but mostly due to injuries. I like this as a great bounce-back game for Michigan right before their bye week. Purdue, not the most daunting. They get the game at home. The only thing that Michigan has to be cautious of is the speed of David Bell and Rondale Moore. They can't get caught on a hangover. They can't get caught sleeping on these wide receivers. If Jack Plummer lives up to expectations and Purdue is actually healthy, they could drop some points on the Wolverines. But I don't see them losing at home. They get a win over Purdue. They get a bye week, and we can kind of breeze through these next 3 games. We're going to drop wins on every single one of them before the Ohio State game. They should defeat Maryland, who they took easy care of last year, defeating them 38-7 on the road. They should defeat Rutgers on the road, a team they defeated 52-0 last year, and keep in mind a few years ago, annihilated them 78-0. Greg Schiano's there. I expect the Scarlet Knights to be more competitive, but not against the Wolverines. They get a win here, and they get a win against Indiana. And we don't mean to write off the Hoosiers so quickly, but Michigan did go on the road and beat them 39-14 last year. That was a good Indiana team. They're going to be better in 2020. If this game was at Indiana, I would say be very cautious because Ohio State's in the next week. But it's at home. By this point, the defense is thriving. By this point, any quarterback questions have been solved. They might be looking ahead to Ohio State. I wouldn't think it'd be too much, though. They get the win over a very, very good Indiana team. And then Ohio State. The game. The game that Jim Harbaugh is winless in since he took over in Ann Arbor. 0-5 against the Buckeyes. And not many of them have been close. Only a few decent matchups between the Wolverines and the Buckeyes. Ohio State has won 8 straight in this series. They have not lost in Columbus against Michigan since the year 2000. And that will not change in 2020. Ohio State simply has too much talent. Justin Fields, Chris Olave, getting Master Teague back at running back when he is healthy, getting Trey Sermon in from Oklahoma. And while many will point to the losses on defense, I guarantee you they're not going to be as bad as you think they are. And by November 28th, they're going to be just fine and poised to make a Big Ten championship and poised to make a college football playoff appearance. On the road against the Buckeyes, against a Michigan team that still has a lot to figure out, it's just not going to happen. So 9-3 for the Wolverines. The schedule lines up in favor for them that if they get past Washington, they could be 10-2 by season's end. If they somehow beat Minnesota, they're 11-0 going into the Ohio State game. The Wolverines are certainly Big Ten East contenders this year. Despite what some will say, they are certainly Big Ten East contenders this year. But, as we all know, if you want to win the East, you've got to go through Ohio State. And Michigan literally has to go through Ohio State if they want to have any chance of winning that division. And I just don't see that happening this year. They haven't done under Harbaugh yet, and until he can do it, I don't think it's going to change. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert. Michigan Wolverines going 9-3 in 2020, a chance at yet another 10-win season under Jim Harbaugh. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, check out everything down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.